Okay, I think, yeah, looking a little bit better now. Okay, so what's up, guys? I know that was disgusting. There's a quick guide to light modifiers, understanding them, get introduced to more, and those that probably you might have not heard about, and how to actually apply their use into your photography. Let's get right into it without much ado. So first of all, let's understand what a light modifier is. The keyword here is modifier, which simply means, or which implies, changing light or causing a difference into how originally a light would look like. So let's, for instance, talk about a typical example. An actual practical example is when the sun gets in front, or let's say have a cloud move by or block its view, your view as a human being. When you look at it, you definitely find it quite, easy to look into the sky, as against if the clouds were not there. Same, it will also apply to how shadows are rendered under your feet, as well as against subjects or against objects. So basically, that's a modification of the sun's light or the sun rays coming down, being blocked or being, shot through a film of translucency that is caused by the cloud. So basically, that's what modification when it comes to light is all about. So you're quickly going to identify some light modifiers, what they're used for. And as we go through, I'll be showing you some B-rolls of how I use some of the light modifiers I'm going to talk about into my day-to-day photography journey. So let's quickly get into the first light modifier, and that is a softbox. Softboxes are so much in vogue nowadays because a lot of people are using it day in and day out. First of all, looking at an octabox, which has 8 sides, if you are familiar with your shapes, 8 sides, that has 2 scrims or 2 diffusion materials right in front of it, and you have a light shooting from behind. Shoots through this modifier and gives you soft light. If you use a bare flash, you're going to have a lot of nasty shadows where they aren't supposed to be, unless probably that's what you're intending. But if you're using a softbox, it is going to render a lot of softening for your subject. Also, is going to eradicate the shadows, nasty shadows that may be caused against the background. Moreover, softboxes are also built with some reflective material lined up inside. So taking a look at this softbox, you notice the reflective surface that I'm talking about, and its purpose is to just make the light a little bit more intense. So when the light shoots through the modifier, it ruffles around inward and comes out through the 2 diffusion materials. And because there are 2 diffusion materials, it means you have, much more softness. So if you want to increase the intensity and, bring in a little bit more hardness or harshness, you can take off one of the diffusion materials or even both, so that you can get a harsh light depending on how you want the outcome to turn out. So softboxes come in sizes, shapes. There are those that are deep, those that are quite, shallow. They all give different looks to your images. So if you're looking for a softbox that will serve the purpose of, shooting, let's say, a large group, you're going to need, of course, a huge softbox. They come across as a lot of options that you can choose from in terms of the sizes. Like I said before, 120, 95 centimeters, 105 centimeters, like what I'm using right now in this video, as you can see. And as you may know, the larger the light source, the softer the light is. So the next time you're using a softbox, you should understand why you're using which one, so that you don't just pick a softbox because this sole purpose is to be put in front of a light and just shoot. You should really understand the rationale behind a softbox. Nowadays, softboxes come in such a design that is very easy to assemble. Initially, you'd have to disassemble everything, and when you want to put them back, you put in rods in here and there, you build it up. And it takes a whole lot of time as against what the new designs are today. You just push it down, you lock it up, and the softbox is already set up for you. So that's about softboxes. Let us move to the next modifier. The next modifier I'm going to talk about is also a softbox, but this is a unique type of softbox. It's called a lantern softbox. The reason why I've separated this and to talk about just this is because of how the light turns out to be. So we are still talking about modification of light. Here, let's say, for instance, you have a speed light that you are shooting through this modifier. You're going to have the light spread 360 all around you, and that's simply because of the design. So you notice that the white diffusion material is all around it, and it's just one sheet of diffusion. It might come off as harsh than the traditional softbox that has two scrims or two diffusion materials. And so if you're using this for, let's say, photo shoot, you're going to, of course, have a lot of light dispersing around, and you might not be able to control it as a peculiar light unless probably you hang something opaque around it to center the light. So if you are, for instance, shooting, let's say, a table scene where you want the light to actually hit everywhere, maybe people are sitting around the table and want it to actually hit everywhere, you can hang the lantern softbox from above, and once you take the picture, it's going to light up everywhere in a 360 angle. I don't mostly use this light modifier unless I'm shooting less videos where, again, dining set where a lot of people are sitting around a table. That's where I would want a lot of light hanging from around, and I wouldn't like to have my light stand get in the way, let's say if I have to rotate around my subject. So I can hang the lantern from above and the light will just shoot through everywhere and it will hit each and every subject around. The next light modifier is one that I mostly use and I so much love it, and it's called a beauty dish. Beauty dishes, as the name implies, are meant to create beauty, to create contours, to create contrast, to bring out the feel, the 3D, look of any subject. Particularly, it's mainly used to shoot beauty photographs of women, of guys, anything that can actually bring in the cheekbones, bring in, the eye sockets, make them as deep and have a lot of contrasting shadows there where you might need them. The beauty dish is your best bet. Initially, beauty dishes were made of aluminum throughout. They are still actually coming in such designs, but nowadays they are merging the design with softboxes where you have that particular metal dish in there that makes it a beauty dish. Because the beauty dish, what makes it very different from the traditional softbox that we spoke about earlier, is that when this pan is actually right in front or within the beauty dish, when the light shoots, it hits this pan and it ruffles around before it comes out. So that particular spot there in the middle is meant to shoot the light back again, and it brings in much more, reflection and much more intense power from your flash already given its power. It's going to make it a little bit more, let's say, it's going to double it up. So basically that's how a beauty dish actually works. And as I spoke about the merge of the softbox plus this particular traditional design, it is mainly designed as such so that you don't have to pick your softbox and your beauty dish along. It is very easy to collapse it because it is designed as a softbox. And when you place in that plate, that metallic plate, then it turns to be a beauty dish. So that is it. So you can go for either designs and they're going to give you relatively the same look for your images. The next light modifier to talk about is a reflector, and I think it's the most basic light modifier that I can actually talk about right now because I'm pretty sure that you've used it before. When I started out in photography, I didn't have the money to purchase a softbox first. I could get myself a reflector because I was using it to bounce back light and all that. For the most part, in my photography journey, when I started out, I was shooting with the sun. And I knew that I could bounce the light from the sun back into my subject, and so I was mainly using the reflector for the most part. And the reflector, as you may know, comes in a lot of different phases, different colors. The notable one is the 3-in-1 or the 5-in-1, where you have the gold phase, you have the silver phase, you have the diffusion phase, or let's say the white phase, then you have the scrim within, plus what is behind, which is the black phase where you can use as a flag, which we're going to talk about later in this video. So a reflector is meant to bounce back light, and the reflective surface where silver is meant to actually shoot or bounce back specular light. The gold will give you the feel of warmth, and the white surface is going to give you a natural soft look of a bounce from the light source. You can use this plus another light modifier, let's say the beauty dish or the softbox, where you can bounce the light back from the opposite side of the softbox or the light source, no matter what the light modifier may be. And it's going to bounce the light back into the areas where you might want the light to hit again. For instance, if you're using just one light source and you want to fill in, you can use the reflector to do that. So here you're modifying the light which is coming from one source and you're bouncing it back to another side. And you can actually make it look as if you used two light sources. If, for instance, you have the silver or the gold phases where the light is going to be much more specular in the direction that it is bouncing the light towards. The next light modifier I'm going to talk about is the scrim. And with the scrim is simply the diffusion material that I've been speaking about from when I started talking about the softboxes and the reflector. All right, so the scrim is simply a diffusion material, just like the example I gave with relation to the sun and the cloud. So the cloud coming in front of the sun to soften the light from the sun just works exactly like the scrim. So the scrim is simply a huge, or no matter what size it is, as long as it's translucent and it can soften the light when the light passes through it, then it can actually soften the shadows and it can give you a very nice even look overall across board. Photographers mostly use this when the light is very harsh. For instance, when your light source is the sun and it's around noon, when the sun is right above the head of your subject or over your heads, you might not want the deep shadows in the eye sockets that you're going to have. So a scrim can actually hang above your subject. You can have an assistant hold it over the head of your subject, and you can have a very nice soft look for your subject. So you can easily make your own scrim when you have a translucent material which is white, or you can find that in your reflector, 5-in-1 reflector or the 3-in-1 reflector. No matter what reflector it is, you definitely have that, and that's actually what holds the reflector together, you know, within the build of the reflector. So when you unzip your reflector, for instance, you can pull out the scrim or the diffusion material and you can use it to soften the shadows of your subjects. For instance, under the nose, under the lips, under the chin, in the eyes, in the sockets, just like that. And you can have a pleasing look much more than you might have when the sun is right above your head. And it's causing a lot of problems when it comes to the shadows. Next up are cones. All right, so cones are basically light modifiers that mostly come with some of the lights that we probably might have used. The 8600 BM, the 8400, you know, what have you. Chances are that you've actually seen this particular dish or a cone before. And this is actually meant to shoot a lot more directional light because it's meant to actually narrow the light beam. When you take this off, you notice that your bulb will shoot all over across. But once you have that cone right in front of your light modifier, you can shoot a much more directional light. And it's very specular in its intensity, makes light very harsh. So if you want to soften it, you can easily put in front of it a scrim, or you can put in front of it any diffusion material and it will soften the light that's coming from it, but it's still going to maintain that harsh look because it's a smaller light modifier or a light source. Next up are snoots. Snoots are quite similar to the cones that I spoke before, but this time the snoots are much more narrow with the light beam that it throws. Just look at this particular image. This was shot with a snoot, and that snoot was meant to actually center the lights in the face of the model. Equally, I shot another session outdoors where I had the snoot far away so that the light beam will be much bigger, because once you send your light source backwards, it becomes broad than when you get it closer to your subject. So with the snoot right in front of my AD600, I could shoot the light and center it on my subject without hitting the reflective glass that's behind my subject. And basically, this is how you can actually use a snoot to center the light and separate the light to shoot towards your subject. I created my own snoot for this particular look, this video, where I threw in, you know, some visual appeal with powder. So just like you can see, you notice that the light beam is very narrow, and that's because of how much I've narrowed down my light. And this is how a snoot basically works. So if you're looking at centering your light in a peculiar manner towards a particular spot, you can use a snoot to actually execute this. Next on the list of modifiers are projectors. Projectors come in different shapes, different, you know, mechanisms. This particular one that I use for this shoot actually has, you know, something like a lens. I will put it that way. It's actually a lens where you can change its focus to soften the edges of the light beam or to harden it. So it comes with different shapes where you actually insert things that we call gobos in there to create shadows and make it look as if you're shooting through a window, or you're having your light source come through a window, or different other shapes that you can actually choose from. So the gobos in there are meant to change the light source or to modify the light's look. So first of all, you need a projector in front of your light, and it works basically like the snoot, just that you can do a little bit more with what you can do with the projector as against the snoot, because the snoot you just center the light and that's that. But with the projector you can actually modify it a little bit more with a gobo, as I said before, as well as how focused the light's edges are, whether you want them softened or you want them hard. The next light modifier I'm going to talk about is very basic. I'm sure you've seen it. You've seen a lot of videos with its use, and these are gels. Colored gels, to be precise. So colored gels are actually meant to change the color of light. So it's just rubber material that has color as its make. All right. So let's say you have a red gel, you place it in front of a 5600 Kelvin light, you're going to turn it into red. Equally, you can also change the tint of lights. Let's say you have a very warm light, a tungsten light, and you want to actually change it and modify it to make it look a little bit more pleasing to the eye in terms of making it look daylight more. You can actually place in front of the tungsten light a blue gel, and it will counter the look to make it look a little bit more daylight temperature. So as I may have said earlier, the gels come in different colors, different shapes. There are those that come in shapes of circles, others are in squares, in sizes. Some come in like sheets that you roll and you can actually cut depending on the light that you're going to modify it with. So you can make your picks, and these are very cheap, light modifiers that you can actually find around, and you can even make them yourself, because if you have, let's say, a rubber or a sheet of rubber, you can actually paint some color on it. As long as it's translucent, it's going to give you that particular look of the color that you actually hang or have in front of your light. So as you saw in the images that rolled by, I use gels to actually achieve the look that you can see. So you can use complementary colors to actually give a lot more visual appeal to your images. The next time you have a next photo shoot and you want to use gels, you can follow suit and you can have wonderful images. The next light modifier I want to talk about are umbrellas. We have shoot-through umbrellas and reflective umbrellas. The shoot-through umbrellas, as the name suggests, are light modifiers which are of umbrella design, where the light actually shoots through the umbrella and softens it. So it's just like a diffusion material, but in the build of an umbrella. Whereas the reflective umbrellas are made of the silver lining within the umbrellas, where the light actually shoots into the umbrella and the light comes back as a bounce. So this time the light is not going through the umbrella, but it's coming back, as against the shoot through umbrellas where the light shoots through and it gets softened. So these are the differences. And these light modifiers are very cheap. They come in different sizes, just like the softboxes. And you can actually get a wonderful and pleasing image. Just that you might not be fortunate when you send it outdoors, because it can actually catch a lot of wind. And if you're shooting at the beach, this is not the light modifier that I'm going to recommend. I suggest you use this mostly in the studio, and perhaps use your BEAUTYDISH, the traditional BEAUTYDISH, because I can't even say more for the softboxes, because when the wind hits it, it can actually push it, unless you have an assistant holding onto it. But the umbrellas, even though they are as good, you can't mostly use it outdoors when it's actually windy during the day or during the night, whenever you may be shooting outdoors. But it does a lot well when you shoot with them in the studio, because it can actually give you wonderful light modification for your images. So the last on the list, finally, you had the last point. The last on the list are flags. And flags, I spoke about this, that I was going to talk a little bit more in depth about them. Flags are actually meant to stop lights, to block lights where you don't want the light to touch. So with the reflector, the 5-in-1 reflector, the 3-in-1 reflector, you're definitely going to have that face at the back where it's black. So the black face is meant to be used to stop light, or to block light, or to shape light the way you want it. When you want shadows, you can actually use that to stop the light. And as you may know, black actually absorbs light, so you're gonna just not have any light where the black flag or the black face is actually facing. So flags might come off as not necessarily important, but you can actually use them if you want to really shape your light and you don't want light to touch some particular areas in your scene, let's say in a video or even photography. For the most part, you can actually use them to your best advantage. So these are basically the light modifiers I can talk about now, and probably in depth I'll be showing you more videos, and I'll be explaining a little bit more using these light modifiers to my best ability, so that you can actually know how you can use them better as against just these explanations. But I hope this video has been of help to you, so that you can actually inform yourself when you're buying your next light modifier, and when you're using them, you can actually know when to use them and how appropriate they can be at that point in time where you're shooting, when you're shooting, so that the outcome of the photos can be the best that they can ever be. Thank you very much for watching this video to the very end. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, turn on the post notification button. I'm going to catch you later in the next video. Have a wonderful day. See ya.